You've likely built up tools and techniques and methodologies and frameworks over the years that you use in service of client engagements. In fact, it's probably a large part of the value that you bring to those engagements. And so it's understandable that as a service provider, you might be hesitant to share a lot of those tools and techniques and frameworks through your content marketing efforts. It's your secret sauce. You're worried about giving away the farm and not having any value left over once you get into an engagement. But as a result, your content marketing is ineffectual at best and potentially damaging at worst. And I'm going to argue in this video why I think you should actually give away every single one of those secrets. First, why is it a bad thing to keep that stuff close to your chest? Several reasons. One, your client is judging you by the stuff that you give away. So if you're giving away useless stuff, your client assumes that the stuff that they would be paying for is also useless. You also have to keep in mind who is consuming your content. It's not just potential clients, it's also referral sources or potential referral sources. And so those people are consuming your content and learning about your world and learning that you may or may not be able to help people in their network. If your content marketing is vague and bland and not genuinely helpful, they're going to be less inclined to refer. And so I would argue that you should be giving away everything, all of your frameworks, all of your methodologies, all of your tools. And I learned this a long time ago. I was one of the founding partners of an innovation consulting firm. We originally were a product development shop, but we had started moving upstream to work with enterprise organizations. And we were bumping up against the Deloitte Digitals of the world and those kinds of organizations. And what I learned was they have these big marketing apparatuses. They were sharing white papers, they were sharing blog posts, they were sharing all kinds of content. But a lot of it was vague. A lot of it was very high level. And I don't know if it was because they didn't want to offend anybody, but the practical result was that they were rounding off all of the edges on their content. So they were writing a lot of stuff, but they weren't actually saying anything. And so we decided to go the other direction and literally give away everything that we had to offer. We also realized that our proprietary methodology wasn't actually that proprietary. If you are in the software development world, you probably have some version of discovery, design, develop, deploy, or something like that. And we were using something like that. We were using agile development. We were using lean startup methodology. So we just owned it. And we just said, hey, this is our methodology. And we published all of it. And what we found was that by giving away all of our stuff, it didn't hurt us because they weren't necessarily going to be in a position to implement it. It actually helped us because it positioned us as a trusted advisor so that when they were ready to hire us, they knew that we would be able to do the work because we had shown them, rather than telling them we're smart, we showed them that we were smart through the sharing of all of our secrets and the sharing of all of our methodologies. And so again, I think it differentiates you for several reasons. One, it shows that you know what you're talking about, so you don't have to talk about how smart you are, you can show how smart you are. Two, it demonstrates a level of depth in the topic. You don't have to be surface level or really high level. Three, it differentiates you relative to all of those other competitors that are putting out vague or unhelpful or generic content. Four, your client is not realistically going to be able to implement it. They don't have time, most likely. Even if they did, you still have the benefit of all the pattern recognition, of all of the reps that you have done in all the other engagements that you've done. And while you might share all your secrets, it doesn't necessarily mean that your client is going to be able to implement it. And so what'll happen is either they won't have time to do it, or they'll think they have time to do it, they'll try it, they'll realize it's harder than it looks, and then they'll come to you and ask for help to try to clean up the mess. Both of those are wins. The other thing is that, at least the way that we approach authority marketing, most of it is through organic social. And we do that because it's free or very inexpensive. We do that because that's where a lot of attention goes right now. We do that because people buy from people and not companies, and so it gives you an opportunity to build a relationship with your audience over time. And we also do it because great content can spread. People will like it, people will comment it, people will repost it, that kind of thing, introducing you to a broader audience. But that only happens if your content is great. So giving away your secrets makes it more likely that your content is great, which makes it more likely that people will like, comment, share, etc. And so you do this over and over again, you do this consistently over a long enough period of time, and people will start to think of you as a trusted advisor, somebody who will help them with their problems. And so when a buying window emerges, when they are ready, they will raise their hand and they'll want to speak to you, and you will be naturally predisposed to be the person to help them out because you have taught them all of your secrets, all your frameworks, all your methodologies. if you do a really good job at this, your ideas become frameworks that other people leverage. So if you've gone to business school or if you have any exposure to famous consulting frameworks like the BCG Matrix or the McKinsey 7S framework or those kinds of things, obviously this is much, much harder to do. But I think that just speaks to giving away your frameworks and giving away your methodologies. Those organizations realized if they give that stuff away, other organizations will use it. And if they use it, every time they use it, they're going to say the BCG matrix, which translates some brand goodwill to those new people as well. And so all of these consultants all over the world are talking about BCG matrix or the McKinsey 7S framework or the Porter 5 Forces model. Every time they use those, they're transferring some goodwill for the BCG brand, the McKinsey brand, Michael Porter, et cetera, to those new people, and they're indoctrinating them into their worldview as well. So assuming you buy into this idea, where do you start? The good news is I bet that you actually have a whole bunch of stuff just through the data exhaust all around you. So when we started doing this again at my former company, the way that we started was every time we were working on a client engagement, we asked ourselves, is this deliverable something that would be useful for other people? We had an interesting approach to personas, which is a very common artifact in software development. It's a fictional representation of your ideal client. And a lot of people use them as a deliverable and then they never refer back to it again. And we thought that was silly. And so we wanted to refer back to it over and over again. And so we would bake our personas into the wireframes, into mock-ups, into things like that. We'd have a little face of the persona with a little speech bubble commenting about why they liked that aspect of a wireframe or that aspect of a mock-up or whatever it is. We just thought that was a clever approach to bring the persona through the rest of the engagement. And so we codified that and we shared that with everybody else. Every time you do a client engagement, every time you have a client conversation, every time you have a prospect conversation, there are probably the seeds of some interesting content in the form of secrets, ideas, methodologies, frameworks that you are sharing or that you are delivering to clients. So I would just start there and get in the habit of kind of documenting as you do and just have a little person sitting on your shoulder and train yourself to be like, oh, that might be interesting. Oh, that might be interesting. And just get in the habit of developing your awareness for that. So every time you create a deliverable, package it up as a template. Every time you create a process, create a workflow or create a standard operating procedure or create a framework and package that up. Any nuances that you found in terms of implementing frameworks, especially things that are not like 101 type stuff. So a lot of your clients are going to be familiar with the 101 type stuff, but what's the nuance? So for example, I mentioned lean startup methodology. Every one of our clients in innovation consulting was familiar with the idea of the lean startup, but we would talk about things like there's this idea in lean startup called the build, measure, learn loop. We talked about how velocity through that loop is one of our key performance indicators because the faster you get through that loop, the more experimentation you're doing, the faster that you are learning, the faster you're course correcting, and ultimately the faster you make progress as a startup. And velocity through that loop is a nuance that not everybody is familiar with, and that only comes through repetition and through pattern recognition. So your secrets are some of your best marketing tools. I would encourage you to quit hiding them, quit keeping them close to your chest, quit saving them just for your clients, get in the habit of sharing them, hit publish, and don't be surprised if you start to see your content marketing become more effective as a result.